Hello, everyone. So, as you can see, I still don't have a setup going, but like I said, I'm working on it, expected in the next few months. But I just want to say, real quick, before I even begin anything, thank you for what do you call it? Thank you for supporting my first video ever on YouTube. Um, it was a very big hassle on editing everything, but I still uploaded it because I really wanted to post something about Jungle Cruise because I felt it was very important to talk about. And within a few days it reached 1,000 views, which is crazy. So if you're one of the people who watched that video, thank you so much. And if you subscribed after that video, thank you even more. um like I told you then that I want to make more videos in the near future, and here I am. And this is a video that I've been meaning to do for a while, so let's get into it. Okay, so if there happens to be a watermark on top of my video, please excuse that. If it's bothering you especially, it's bothering me too, so don't worry. For some reason, my editing software decided today that, hey, we're gonna start putting watermarks on your video. So we love that for me, but we'll just deal with it. Hopefully, it's not too much of a hassle. And hopefully, in future videos, you won't see the watermark, or maybe if we get lucky, the watermark's not going to show up like it's showing up on my screen right now, and you won't even see it. And I'm just talking like a crazy person right now. So, yes, video on Disney finally including an actual proper gay lead. I went over how it was such a big deal for a Disney movie, and that really got me thinking. So originally I was going to do a whole history of Disney's first LGBTQ plus characters video, but I quickly learned that is a very saturated market. So why not go bigger? Why not go bigger? I am so invested in this. Like, I research and I have a bunch of notes that I will be going over as I'm talking. So if I glance over a lot, it's probably because I'm looking at my notes to make sure I'm getting all my points going through, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's get into it because I've been wanting to get into this. Representation is not only important in the sense that people can see characters that are like them on screen and feel like they belong, but also how people of outside communities that aren't in the LGBTQ plus community views us as a community. For example, because of the feminine gay man trope, many people who recently came out as gay, like specifically a man, have had people say, you don't look gay or you don't act gay, because a lot of the people who say that stuff to them grew up with movies and shows that presented gay men as flamboyant, loving makeup, loving fashion, there for their girl besties, like period, cis, boo, that shit. I feel like a lot of people don't realize that the media and entertainment is like a big part of our society. Like, our society can basically be considered a media and entertainment driven society. Like, any kind of bad representation can directly affect how 1% of the population, for example, is viewed. Also, with this video, I want to discuss how times have changed since like decades ago, but also how much we still need to change, because I feel like that's a very important thing we really need to talk about when discussing LGBTQ plus representation. First of all, I want to go over a brief history of LGBTQ plus representation throughout history, because thankfully, when I say thankfully, we have come so far. So the first documented LGBTQ plus character in any sort of media was in the 1999. Did I just say 1999? I'm sorry. What I meant to say was the 1919 movie, Different from the Others. Different from the Others was created in response to the German government's recent laws regarding homosexuality spreading. And basically, to cut it short, they banned gay people and made it a crime because they thought it was unnatural. Basically, half the governments in the world did at one point, some still do. So yeah, the whole globe basically grouped us with the freaking serial killers, but the fact this movie even came out was crazy. And of course, backlash came from it, like, obviously. Throughout much of the 20th century, the film was basically banned, and like only people in the medical field, specifically in Germany, were allowed to watch it because the German government felt that it promoted homosexuality to the young people who could potentially come across it. The way the German government says it is so funny. They're just like basically saying that there's a potential that younger people could be recruited into being homosexuals, like as if it's the fucking Avengers. You guys, they found the freaking Rainbow Recruitment Center. What do we fucking do? I apologize for that. Um, let's just move on. You know, the sad thing about this is that this kind of thinking still exists today when it comes to how young people view literal human beings. Conservatives like to use the excuse that kids will be confused by watching LGBTQ plus characters, but we'll get into that later, like all that dumb shit later, because we will have a giant discussion about it. As I was saying, throughout the 20th century, we saw very few representation of LGBTQ plus people, and if we did, it was usually something very negative, like the very feminine male villain, because the only way a gay was accepted back then was if they were evil, to symbolize the fact that they are evil and evil is in their blood, if that makes sense. This kind of lack in actual proper LGBTQ plus representation is think mostly because of the motion picture production code, which was passed in the late 1920s. I might make a whole video on that because it's just so interesting. Like that time period in film was like crazy. That particular film code that was required for any movie to be released into cinemas wasn't just exclusive to homosexuality, because it also affected how women can be seen in those films and like a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's like a whole other thing, like I said. It wasn't until the 1970s where like proper gay and lesbian representation was actually considered in like film and television. Around this time, shows like All in the Family and The Jeffersons started including gay and trans characters, but they were usually for like those one part, very special episodes, that address like serious issues or problems, those episodes. The All in the Family episode in particular was very special because it kind of like, how do you say it? Like, brought that whole stereotype thing to the attention of the public, if that makes sense. Like, people saw that, not all gay people are these feminine maniac villains that are trying to go after our heroine or hero. You know what I'm trying to say? 2 decades later, in the 90s, we finally started seeing an increase in much better representation of LGBTQ plus characters in shows and even movies. Especially when we talk about the big screen, like this was a big deal because it's called the big screen for a reason. Not only is the screen big, but also it's a big deal if you're in those movies or like a certain community is represented, because it gets a wider release and more people see it because it's these like events. To this day, the big screens are very important, which is why you see films like Black Panther and Love, Simon being so important. The 90s brought like so many iconic shows and movies that kind of broke the ground for LGBTQ plus representation. Like when I say broke the ground, like it broke the fucking ground. Like it like opened up the fucking ground, shook it out, like literally took out the concrete with the fucking ground. We saw shows and movies like Will and Grace, Philadelphia with Tom Hanks, and of course, the ever iconic go-to movie for woke straight people, Brokeback Mountain, which does have problems of its own, but I'm not gonna get into it. I'll give you a hint. It's the fact that two straight boys were cast in a historical movie, a gay romance film, like something on a scale that was never done before, and them getting praised for it and making history when it should have been, an actual gay person that should have gotten those awards and recognition. Just saying. So yeah, the 90s are what basically is considered the Renaissance age of LGBTQ plus representation. Is it called Renaissance age? Like, is that when something's booming, right? Like Renaissance age? Throughout the decade, with the help of more positive representation of LGBTQ plus people, the public's perception of the LGBTQ plus community was like about to shift, like it's shifting towards a more positive light, not the, oh yeah, the feminine gay guy that's literally gonna murder this straight man and his wife shit, that shit, like definitely not happening. Not to say homophobia wasn't a problem, because it very much was. Like, it exists today for a reason. But like I said earlier, thankfully it's getting more rare to see people like that openly speaking against gay people, as more and more of the public start openly rallying behind the LGBTQ plus community. So now that we kind of established the like historical representation of the LGBTQ plus community, I wanted to go over the different genres of shows and movies over the years and how they have represented LGBTQ plus people. Let's start off with comedy, because in recent years we have seen a rise in better LGBTQ plus rep in comedy. Historically, however, we have been like the punching bag joke of a comedy show or movie. Whether it be the feminine gay man who loves makeup and jocks, or the butch masculine lesbian, or the trans woman who is just a man in a dress. The thought of our existence was just a big ass joke in these movies and shows, and it was just there for straight and cisgender people to laugh and mock at us with. I feel like Clueless would be a perfect example of that, because Christian was always considered the funniest part in the movie because of, do I even need to say it? Like, he was considered the funniest part for a reason. In recent years, however, like I said, we have seen a rise in much better representation of LGBTQ plus people in comedy. Like, for example, in Disney's Cruella, we have Artie, who is considered gay in the movie and does fall under the feminine gay man who loves fashion trope, but he isn't made into the butt of the joke, if that makes sense. He is actually very funny, probably the funniest part to the whole movie, but he isn't funny by simply using his feminine self. He is funny because he's funny. Like, he jokes about stuff. Like, he doesn't use himself as the joke, if that makes sense. Now, horror has always been one of the best genres for us, in my personal opinion. Obviously, not in all cases, because the stereotypes have always existed in certain movies and shows. But horror movies and shows in general have historically been the genre where the gays and whatever else in the LGBTQ plus community thrive. For example, Jennifer's Body, if I'm not mistaken, had probably the first bisexual lead in a movie, and like, good for Megan Fox. Like, good for you, girl. Go for it. And the movie supposedly represented the bi community pretty well from what I'm hearing from like actual bi people, but that doesn't mean every bi person can agree. But from what I'm hearing in the bi community, people actually like the representation. And I think it was the first time they actually saw themselves on screen represented properly in a way. I think we all know this by now, but if you didn't know by now, for some reason, there is this like stereotype in the real world, but also in media, that the bisexual person or character usually will cheat on their significant other or will have polyamorous relationships and shit. Like, definitely not the case for all bi people, maybe some bi people, but definitely not all bi people. Okay, the romance genre has been very, very interesting. In recent years, we've seen a huge spike in more romantic movies with gay couples like Call Me By Your Name and Love, Simon. Once again, straight men making history for the LGBTQ plus community. But let's continue. But historically, when there was a gay character in a romance film, they were usually sidelined as just a gay best friend to the usual white, cisgender, straight female, and never really had their own stories and experiences to be shared. They were just there for the sake of the movie, just being like, see, we represent everyone, you know. I think the most famous example of this would be My Best Friend's Wedding, which is like nowadays known as the go-to movie for like people to point out how one-dimensional gay characters have historically been. More recently, there was a Netflix movie, The Perfect Date, which is basically the same fucking trope. Just instead of the one-dimensional gay best friend to the straight cisgender white girl, it was the one-dimensional gay best friend to the straight white cisgender, excuse me, white boy. So I guess cool, represent the straight but gay buddy shit. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying at this point, but you get the point. The movie did try making him seem less one dimensional by giving him a love interest and also having some issues and the best friendship with the main lead character dude. But even with that, it didn't really work like they thought it would probably work, because at the end of the movie, he was still very one dimensional. Because, yes, he did end up in that relationship, but also that relationship was kind of played in the background. Like they literally ended the movie with the fucking straight couple dancing, and then the two in the back just barely are fucking dancing, and like they don't even say the fucking other dude's name. Like it was very like way of saying, yeah, we're representing you. Drama has always been a genre where the LGBTQ plus community has always been heavily featured. I mean, queer pain is like a thing many audiences like for a reason, which is very concerning. Usually in these drama shows and movies, the LGBTQ plus characters go through something what I call the rainbow three ways of pain, and you'll understand why I call it the three ways of pain. The first type of pain these dramas usually depict is like when the character, like the LGBTQ plus character, has to come out, but their coming out goes wrong and they get like disowned or like killed or some shit like that, you know? Or like they want to come out, but they're too scared to because they have a very religious family, and it shows their mental fucking turmoil and mental breakdowns and shit, you know? That kind of fucking drama, all that to make it seem all crazy and shit, and they like over dramatize it. And the second type of pain that these dramas depict LGBTQ plus in is that the character who is like finally all happy and at peace and shit, and like you're all happy for them and like it's all good, but then some fucking bad news hits them, like, you know, their partner dying, getting shot or something, or like they get an STD, which is like usually almost always the case, like it's happened before. And the final, more rare type of pain that LGBTQ plus characters usually go through in these dramas is that like they're the villain, like the LGBTQ plus villain, and they have like very fucking tragic backstories, like like oh he got raped or some shit, like like that kind of tragedy shit, and like it's like crazy that they even consider it, and like sometimes it just goes downright offensive. I feel like I'm cursing a lot in this video. I'm so sorry. For some reason, today's the day where like my brain was like, just say all the curse words you want, girl, go ahead. So I apologize for all these curse words. I'll try to stop now. Anyways, there's probably more than 3 types of queer pain, so let me know what I missed. But those are like the general types of pain queer and trans folk in these program experience, and it's like weird as fuck. Like I'll get into why it's weird as fuck. I understand that it's a drama and has to be very over dramatic and crazy and stuff, but like it just gets to a point where it's like it's all too common, and like there's a reason why it's all too common, like why is it always happening? Now, I'm not saying LGBTQ plus people can't be going through all of this shit and battling stuff, like horrible shit, but why does it usually end so badly for them? Like, their partner dying, or like them getting an STD, kind of bad stuff, like why is it always that tragic for them? Anyways, action has been a very interesting genre because I really don't know what to think of this one, but I do have some thoughts on it. Historically, representation of LGBTQ plus people in like action and thriller films and shows have been very scarce. This can be contributed to the fact that these action flicks and shows have been normally historically been aimed at the dude bros demographic, like marketing specifically towards them. Nowadays, things are changing, especially with a society that's changing, because, well, obviously, we have seen an increase in women in action films, which have in turn brought more female audiences to the action genre. But also, we have seen the rise in stan culture, and also the gays and girlies dusting over who Marvel casts as the next superhero. I'm just kidding, kind of. But yeah, more and more people outside the typical action demographic of dude bros are tuning into the action-packed worlds that are filling our big screens, or well, small screens now because Miss Run on her besties making sure that isn't possible. With that, more and more studios are gonna want to better represent the people who are literally giving them money to watch their movie. Not to mention, while the dude bros have always not been the most supportive, we can't deny that not all of them are obviously going to be homophobic and going on Twitter complaining about 2 superheroed men as being a couple. The term dude bro changes as society changes as well, believe it or not. There are literally gay dude bros out there, like there are. We did, in fact, see a rise in men supporting the LGBTQ plus community. I think that fact itself should teach us that Twitter is usually not the world. Anyways, more recently, we have seen many action films include LGBTQ plus characters, like Jungle Cruise, for example. Speaking of, Disney also does have plans to include LGBTQ plus heroes in their MCU universe with movies like The Eternals and the inclusion of the Scarlet Witch's fruity ass twin sons, Billy and Tommy, aka Wiccan and Speed. Not to mention films like Netflix's The Old Guard, which is a great film, by the way. If you have not seen it, please watch it. It's so good. But it included a gay couple at the forefront, which was amazing. Netflix is actually very well known for standing with our community, even stopping production on like a very expensive show because the home country wouldn't let them include a gay lead. We have seen a gradual rise in LGBTQ plus people in action films, but action is still very far off in the representation game compared to some of the other major genres. Lastly, we have family films and shows, which, in my opinion, has been one of the best genres that have adapted to the ever changing, diverse world. Wow, now that I think of it, 2021 has been the year of like the gays taking over the family films. Like, hide your children, the gay agenda is coming, bitch. I'm joking, by the way. Please don't take me seriously. And like, if a Christian organization sees this, there is literally no gay agenda. Like, I was just joking. Don't take me seriously. Yeah, that's all. It's been very hard to get more LGBTQ plus representation in this particular genre because of the stigma that LGBTQ plus is something that isn't appropriate for kids. We have like the whole I'm not homophobic or anything, but the kids should not be exposed to this argument. They try justifying this, saying that the kids will get confused by this, and there's so much to say about that. First of all, you are most definitely homophobic because if your child was indeed somewhere in the fucking LGBTQ plus spectrum, it would somewhat be a problem for you, because if it did somehow confuse them, would that be a problem for you? Secondly, it won't confuse your kids. Otherwise, you would have seen no gay or trans people in the real world because of that gigantic list of straight cisgender characters that we were exposed to growing up. You using the argument is just a sweet and butterfly version of saying gays are gross and I don't like them. Not to mention, there are literal kids with two moms and two dads, and they're definitely, most of them are definitely not growing up fruity as hell. And there are, believe it or not, LGBTQ plus children, like people under the age of 13 who know they are LGBTQ plus or don't know but have these feelings that they are unsure about, which is why representation is so important, because it will show these kids that, you know, what they are feeling or want to feel or whatever is perfectly valid and fine and normal. Let's get personal here for a second. Like, I'm gonna get personal. I knew as young as 7 that I liked boys. I would have loved to seen someone like me on the screen to show me that what I was feeling was normal. Like, I would have really loved that. It would have really helped me in life. Gatekeeping certain stories will do more harm than good. Not to mention, so much bullying would be prevented if kids just learned about the people they are trying to hurt. Anyways, I'm gonna move on because this is pissing me off. It always pisses me off, and I want to keep my cool. In recent time, more and more family and children's media have started to include more LGBTQ plus characters and stories. Hi, it's the next day. You see, with my luck, the video that I, finished last night while I was recording what you just saw got deleted after that part that we just ended off on. So here I am with my iced coffee in the morning, trying to finish this video, so let's just continue. Anyways, in more recent time, we have seen shows and movies like The Owl House, Andy Mack, The Loud House, High School Musical, the musical, the series. I know it's a very long name, it annoys me so much. And I think the best one so far for like representation that I know of personally is Sheron, the Princess of Power on Netflix, which was a reboot of the 90s version. And that included people in the LGBTQ plus community, like multiple people, like non-binary people, and I believe lesbian people. If I'm not mistaken, please let me know because I have not been able to see the show incomplete yet. I just saw a few episodes, but I want to get into it. There's a lot more like Steven Universe, for example, but like I can have a giant list of all the kids shows, and it would take longer, and this video is already long, so I'm gonna stop that right there with the examples. But you get the point. So many great movies and shows that represent. It is, in my opinion, the only genre besides drama to put an emphasis on representation, like proper representation usually. I'm just thinking of the kids who were just like like in my situation when I was little, who are seeing these characters being on screen, something that I never got. Like, it makes me so emotional. Like, I'm not trying to cry right now, but it makes me feel good that they get to see people like them on screen and feel like they belong in this world, and they feel like they have, their feelings being validated. Like, your feelings do matter and you do matter, and I feel like these shows and movies are really gonna help them, like, growing up and stuff. Okay, we're just gonna move on now. So those are all the genres and how far they have come in terms of LGBTQ plus representation. I know that isn't all of them because, well, yeah, there's a whole bunch of genres, but those are like the major ones that like most of society can agree are like important and like iconic. You know what I'm trying to say? So the next part of this video is to talk about how far we need to go still in terms of LGBTQ plus representation, because while we did come really far, there is still a lot we can do to make sure that everyone feels properly represented, and we do it in a way that's very respectful and important to. So like the first minor thing we need to address is that LGBTQ plus people have still yet to like fill many roles, if you know what I'm trying. I've already talked about how like many genres are still behind when it comes to LGBTQ plus representation, and this is where this comes in. Like, have we ever seen a gay ghost hunter or like a transgender, I don't know, transgender superhero on our screens? I was thinking of examples. I'm sorry, but you get the point. So it's just like that kind of thing of like, we have yet to see the capability of what LGBTQ plus people can be in like these fictional stories, and I think that's very important that we make sure that everyone can be something they want to be. Something else we really need to discuss is probably the most major of the two points that I'm trying to make on how far we need to still go. I don't know if you noticed, but throughout my video, I mentioned gay and lesbian people, but I barely mentioned people who aren't gay or lesbian, like transgender individuals, asexual people, pansexual people, bisexual people, you know. Yes, I might have mentioned like a few trans people and a few bi people in my analysis in a way, but they were very rare when I discussed them. They barely came up in my conversation. I think the biggest thing we need to work on in terms of representation is representing people who aren't gay and lesbian in the LGBTQ plus community, because it's so rare to see anyone who isn't a gay or lesbian in any movie or show. Of course, I'm not saying gay and lesbian people aren't underrepresented, because we surely are very underrepresented in many parts of the entertainment industry. I feel like if someone were to say, "Oh yeah, LGBTQ plus representation," people will more likely expect a gay and lesbian character. But like, it's so rare to see a trans character, a non-binary character, a pansexual character, or an aromantic character. You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying the gays and lesbians are just very overrepresented. I'm saying they're overrepresented in the LGBTQ plus community and how we get representation, if that makes sense. Like compared to the rest of the community. When people say they want LGBTQ plus representation, companies and studios usually think that the way to solve that problem is to just add more gay and lesbian people to their movies and shows. When people say LGBTQ plus, they mean not just gays and lesbians, but also people who are trans, or people who are bi, or people who are non-binary, for example. I think when everyone in the community is like properly represented, then we know that is a sign that they are taking representation seriously in a way, if that makes sense. But also that, we have come far and that this is where we are going, thankfully, and that more and more people in the community are finally being represented. We are actually more recently starting to see more movies and shows start including characters who are trans or non-binary or bisexual. And I think that is a great thing, because that is showing that we are getting there, but it will be taking some time, and I hope that we will get there, and I know we will get there. So, yeah. Wow, holy crap, that was a very, very long announcement. If you are stuck here this long, thank you, I guess. You actually made the choice of clicking on my video and hearing me speak for almost half an hour, and that makes me very happy, because that shows, people do care about what I have to say, and I've always wanted to really speak my mind on a lot of things, and I feel like YouTube is the best way to do. I worked really hard to research for this video, so the fact that I finally finished this is great. Like, YouTube videos take time. Oh my god. Like, this was a hassle, and after so many errors and almost mental breakdowns, I actually managed to get it, and I'm very happy, and I hope there's less problems in future videos. Anyways, I would like to hear your opinions on this topic in the comment section down below. I'm always interested in hearing what other people have to say about the things I talk about. It's just really fun to read all the other stuff that I could have missed, maybe, or like maybe something I never noticed. And like, it's just really fun, like reading comments and stuff. So please let me know, like, what do you think of this topic? Like, how far do you think we have come in terms of LGBTQ plus representation? How far do we need to go? Just go off in the comments. I'm very much excited, and I'm very much looking forward to reading those. Anyways, this is where I end the video. I just want to say thank you so much for watching this. Thank you so much for supporting all of the content I've been making so far. I will be making more videos, and I think I'll have a schedule down by hopefully the end of the month. But for now, I'm gonna upload randomly, and I'll upload about just about anything I want to talk about. So stay tuned for those if you're interested in commentary videos. That's basically what I do. So yeah, thank you.